Hi there. In this lecture we see Mikhail Tal against Kampenuss. So this is in 1958. We see e4, d6, the Pirc defense, d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, and now a very, very interesting move, bishop e2. So why not just a knight move? The bishop keeps a view on this diagonal. It sometimes supports g4. It sometimes will support stopping knight g4 tactics. Especially annoying, for example, when you play f4 without bishop e2 and e5, black is often able to play taking and then knight g4 later. We see that actually, yeah, this is a really interesting move. Knight bd7 is played. If bishop g7, the bishop e2 also supports just h4. If h5, we get the g5 square to play with, and now can play knight f3 and knight g5 with a small advantage. Even worse, if black castles here, then h5, and yes, this does activate the h-rook, and is a definite advantage for white. Even with the king in the centre, white's going to be looking forward to great attacking opportunities. If black plays the razor sharp b5, then bishop takes b5, knight takes e4. This situation ends up being favourable to white, where it's getting a dark square bishop here without a counterpart. And this situation is very interesting. For example, like this, white is better here. So anyway, knight bd7 was played. We see f4, and yes, the bishop is guarding against these annoying variations with e5 by stopping knight g4. c6 is played, very humble, and letting white play e5. That's the big point here. If e5, just to show this in action, we would play f takes, d takes, and now d takes e5. Now without a knight g4 to play with to recollect that pawn, black would have to suffer here with, for example, knight takes e5. White could take on d8, pin the knight, castle with check. These are all nice things to happen. Put pressure on the pin's piece, which is only defending e5. Put pressure on e5. And after knight d5, claim a big advantage here. This is a very, very pleasant position indeed. So we see, yeah, some of the big perks here of bishop e2. It might look a little bit quirky, a little bit weird, but actually, yeah, it discourages e5. We see c6. So Tal plays e5, which gives him other perks now. Knight e4, we have bishop g7. And now c4, knight b6. And here, brutal h4 is played. We see black castling into an attack with white, you know, kind of not playing that positionally. You could suspect this isn't positional play. This is more about crushing the opponent's king. So, yes, I love looking at the games of attacking players, as you may have noticed from my expressions. So c5, yeah, we're going to open up the h file now. H takes. If f takes, then actually here, queen b3 is pretty nifty, because we're looking forward to a variety of things. For example, this, that diagonal, h7. And for example, you know, here, as an example, bishop g4 as well is pretty powerful with ideas of brutality like knight g5 check, queen takes h6 check, you know, queen sacrifices based on the h file. And you might think, hold on, let's have a look at that again. What about king h8? Well, then we just play f5, and then, yeah, it's brutal with the king on the h file here. It's absolutely, you know, brutal. That's just going to get mated. So we have actually h takes g6, and as you can imagine, this is also, it's not a brilliant situation for black's king safety. We see queen d3, rook e8, and now a very interesting disruptive move, kind of disconnecting two halves of black's position. The defensive resources kind of cut off by this next move. In particular, this bishop. If that can be restricted on certain points on this diagonal, then that could be interesting as well. So what do you think Tal plays here for 100 points? White to play. Okay, a kind of dislocating e6, so a pawn sack. And the fascinating idea is choice of battery here. What battery is most effective? When I say battery, arrangement of pieces with killer common squares. So you have a choice of battery, H-file battery, or is there a G-file battery? What would be your favourite battery here, in theory? This is kind of a theoretical question. And you might say, well, actually, you know, there's a pawn on G6. What battery are you talking about? There's a pawn on G6. How is that effective? There's stuff on the G-file. Why wouldn't you choose the H-file, which you could immediately gain access to H7? Well, you have to ask, how effective is H7 compared to the G-file battery? So which battery is actually most effective? Tal decided, in fact, that in this case, and let's be super theoretical just for fun, the battery which could offer the pinned piece that you're playing against might be better than a battery where you just get access to a square but there might not be a follow-up. So that's the kind of, if we would take a theoretical undertone here. But Tal actually uses Queen G3. And it's interesting, you might think, well, can't Black just defend this easily? Okay, let's have a look at Queen H3 though. That's an immediate battery, so that's the advantage there. It's also immediate. But Black plays Knight F8. Now that's not to say this position is great, you know, it isn't great for White. It is great. It is a great position. This is a miserable opening for Black with the king just as a sitting target. You know, White's king is cozy just in the centre here. And in fact, for example, White can blast through with this kind of thing, with a knight takes G6 to undermine Black's king safety further. And, you know, Black dare not like take that because of Queen H7. It just looks like it's going to be a disaster pretty soon. You know, this is horrendous. You know, mating on F7. So let's say E5 hitting the queen. It turns out, you know, this variation, queen takes G6. It's not the end of the story. Bishop H5 going in for bishop F7. So it ends up, you know, Black would have to sack the queen, because here, you know, bishop F7 check is a total disaster for Black. Black's going to have to lose more material. Okay, so yeah, these variations, they're not a great advert for Black's king safety. So Queen H3 is strong, but in a theoretical sense, Queen G3 is stronger, because instead of revolving around getting into H7, it's trying to create a battery against the pinned piece. So that's, maybe it's an interesting thing to consider theoretically, how you discern the most effective batteries that you want to potentially construct. But you might ask, well, where is this battery? It's only the queen. How is the rook at all involved with the queen here anyway? We're talking about something which is difficult to construct. Is it? Black plays knight F8. If C takes D4, then sure, we're going to just blast through a queen takes G6 and get a, you know, a nice battery situation here. And we're poking into F7, and this is refuted here. Can you see, for 50 points, White can just play, guess what, F5. And if the bishop moves off, then we just play Queen F7. But okay, Knight F8 was played. How on earth is the battery even constructed here? Even if we do agree in principle, a battery with a pinned piece to eat first may be better than a battery with a blank square. But how on earth do we get the battery? So for 200 points, what do you think Tal played here? And how does it help in the construction of this battery I keep alluding to, but I've kept secret from you for how it's constructed? How is it constructed? What does White play here? Okay, bishop h5. And, you know, Black, you know, because of that blocked in bishop, it hasn't got any like natural defensive resource like bishop f5. It's only a knight holding up g6. The king doesn't really want to get involved here. We see c takes d4. So it's interesting. If g takes h5, then we do get rook takes h5, and the rook is just going to go to g5, and we get our battery with the rook in front of the queen. And that is also a useful configuration in terms of batteries. Sometimes you want the most expensive stuff at the base of your battery. If you take the Alekhine gun construction as a treble battery, the queen is at the base of the two rooks. You want the least expensive doing the front end transactions. Yeah. So here, rook g5, we get that battery. And you might think, well, so what? Is that a big deal? Is this a big deal, this battery? It is, because if you look at bishop f6, we just take that out. And then we're gonna, mate soon. E takes rook g7. Here, battery proof. It's mated. And if bishop h6, then just knight f3, in fact. Yeah. And if here, rook takes g6. But we are actually going to come in crushingly here with various ideas pretty soon. If knight g6 is one of the better moves, then that's hopeless. But otherwise, there are a lot of attacking options coming up. For example, queen h4, queen h5. Black's position is also kind of dislocated. There's really no defensive resources here. So anyway, bishop h5, it was ignored with c takes d4. So white is breaking through with bishop takes g6. Bishop d7. And now rook h5, which does allude to either battery, either rook g5 or the queen coming to the h file behind the rook. So the important part of both batteries is that the queen's behind the rook potentially. Yeah, bishop c6, but now this battery is installed again, rook g5. So it makes you think of attacking batteries. Tal is actually making us think with this game in a way with, what is the most effective attacking battery. Just because a battery, it seems a mystery how to construct it, doesn't mean it's not worth constructing if you can find those magic resources. So here, yeah, getting this battery with the queen at the base of the battery, so the less expensive piece at the front of the battery, it's very, very dangerous. We have knight takes, rook takes, bishop takes e4, rook takes g7, king h8, because if king f8, rook g8 check, and queen g7 is checkmate. So we have king h8, but the winning move here, okay, for 50 points, what would you play here? Which ends the game. Yeah. Queen g5. The queen is joining the front end of the battery to create a mate, a forced mate. If d3, for example, check and then mate. So yeah, a very, very interesting game. It does represent a kind of very subtle, venomous system against the Pirc. Basically saying, I really want to play f4 and e5 without this knight g4 hassle. So if it was played in an ordinary, manner, sometimes you might have been playing f4 and then e5 later, but being annoyed with knight g4 later. So this subtle, modest move is a calm before the storm move. The storm being f4 here. Very, very interesting indeed. So white gaining that kind of wedge in the center, using a positional kind of pawn sacrifice to dislocate black's army into two, making defensive resources like the bishop coming across this diagonal to help key defensive squares much, much harder. And this kind of choice of battery decision, going for a battery which you need to be quite resourceful to construct. Very, very interesting. Queen g3. Yes, the engines like this. They do. They really do. So, and if you think about it, this happens in a lot of Tal's games where the queen is also fundamentally eyeing the king vertically. The queen is fundamentally like this, arranged, x-raying the king immediately rather than indulging in a king chase. So it's kind of emphatically emphasizing that x-ray when we build a battery like this with the rook on in front of the queen. And it's just crushing after. It's a recipe for checkmating. So I really enjoyed that. I hope you did. And may you find the most effective batteries for attacking in your games. Maybe think about this game as an interesting game example. Okay. Thanks very much. Hi there. Thanks for getting to the end of the YouTube video. If you would like to see other Mikhail Tal games, I actually have an amazing course for Mikhail Tal, which is currently at 4.9 with over 400 students. You can check this out from the Kingscrusher TV page. So Chess Strategy and Tactics, Mikhail Tal's amazing games. You can check out some free preview videos as well here. If you do expand all sections, you can see the preview links to get some free previews. So I hope you do check out this course index and the free previews. So I really had a thrilling time actually checking out Mikhail Tal's games. So yeah, the YouTube video here you saw was just a sample from this course. I hope you check it out. Okay, thanks so much. Oh, by the way, comments, questions, likes, shares, all appreciated. And if you did get to this part of the video, please do leave some sort of comment like Tal fan. Okay, thanks again.